Welcome to AR Tales. Today's story is about a husband whose wife demanded access to his family inheritance and threatened divorce when she could not get it. As you listen, ask yourself what you would do if money suddenly became the real test of your marriage. It happened over dinner. Celestia sat across from me, fork untouched, eyes fixed on my face like she had rehearsed what she was about to say. We had been married a little over 2 years. We lived in Charleston, South Carolina. She worked in luxury real estate. I had a steady career, a quiet life, and a family trust my grandfather set up long before I ever met her. Celestia cleared her throat and said, "If you won't give me access to your family's inheritance, then I need to rethink this marriage." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just asked, "Are you saying you want a divorce because you can't access money that isn't marital property?" She nodded, and then she tried to soften it. "I'm saying I need a partner who treats me like an equal. Not someone who keeps me locked out of major financial decisions." That line was polished, but the message underneath it was simple. Give me access or lose me. This is one of those moments where the relationship stops being about feelings and starts being about leverage. I nodded slowly, pulled out my phone, and opened my contacts. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Calling my lawyer," I said. "If you want a divorce, we do this properly." Her face went white. "Evander, I didn't mean right now. I meant we should work together to figure this out." "No," I said. "You were clear. Access to the inheritance or divorce. Since I can't give you access to the inheritance, divorce it is." I hit call and put the phone to my ear. "Soren," I said when he picked up. "It's Evander. I need to discuss divorce proceedings, tonight if possible." Celestia spent the rest of dinner trying to backpedal. She said she was emotional. She said she felt insecure. She said we could work it out. But something had crystallized in my mind the second she made it an ultimatum. She hadn't married me. She had married the inheritance. And when she couldn't reach it, she was ready to walk. Later that night, I sat in my office with my attorney, Soren Pike, on speakerphone. He'd helped my family with legal matters before. He had that calm voice that never rises, even when people are panicking. He asked me to walk through exactly what Celestia said. Then he asked a few questions about our assets, our timeline, and the trust. When he finished, he let out a small breath like he'd been waiting to say this for years. "Your grandfather really thought this through," he said. "Soren explained that the trust was an irrevocable trust established years before my marriage. The inheritance was not marital property. The trust also had specific provisions that prevented distributions being used for legal settlements or spousal claims. It's protected," he said. "Even if she hires the best divorce attorney in Charleston, the structure is airtight." When I told Celestia what Soren said, her response was almost revealing. "That's not fair," she said. "I'm your wife. I supported your career. I built a life with you. Doesn't that entitle me to security?" "You're entitled to your share of what we built together," I said, "but you're not entitled to money my grandfather set aside for our family long before you were in my life." "We'll see about that," she said. Those words sounded confident, but confidence is not the same thing as having a case. A few days later, Celestia hired Riven Cade, one of the top divorce attorneys in Charleston. She wanted him to challenge the trust. That consultation did not go the way she expected. I know because Riven called Soren directly afterward. Apparently attorneys do that sometimes when one of them realizes the other side is walking into a wall. "Your client's wife was in my office for 2 hours, Riven told him. "I reviewed the documents you sent. This is the most airtight inheritance protection I've seen in 20 years. Soren didn't sound surprised. "I had to explain to Mrs. Quinn that she has zero legal claim to any trust assets," Riven continued. "The trust was established years before the marriage. South Carolina law is clear. There are no loopholes. The only way to touch the trust principle would be if your client voluntarily dissolved it, and that would be financial suicide. I'm withdrawing from representation." When Soren told me that, I felt a satisfaction that surprised me. Not because I wanted Celestia to suffer, but because I finally understood why my grandfather set everything up this way. He wasn't paranoid. He was realistic. That night, Celestia came home furious. "Your lawyer somehow convinced my lawyer that I don't have any rights to your money," she said. "My lawyer didn't convince anyone," I replied. "He showed your lawyer the documents." She paced the living room, arms crossed tight across her chest. "This is ridiculous. I'm your wife." "Yes," I said, "and you're entitled to half of what we earned and acquired during our marriage, but not what I inherited before I met you." She tried another angle. "Other states have different laws." "We live in South Carolina," I said. "We got married in South Carolina. South Carolina law applies." She spent the next hour calling other attorneys, one after another. Each one told her the same thing. An irrevocable trust established before marriage is protected from spousal claims. Watching her chase a different answer was like watching someone argue with gravity. Later, she asked me a direct question. "If you dissolved the trust and took the tax hit, would you do it to save our marriage?" "No," I said without hesitation. She blinked hard. "Why not? Because you love money more than me." "No," I said. "Because someone who would end a marriage over money they never had a right to is not someone I want to stay married to." That's when she cried. Big tears. Accusations about love, trust, partnership. She said I was choosing money over us. "I trusted you enough to marry you," I said. "I'm not going to bankrupt my family legacy because you decided you're entitled to it." She moved into the guest room that night. A lot of people think ultimatums are honesty. Sometimes they are. But most of the time, ultimatums are pressure dressed up like principles. When the divorce process began, I thought it would be simple. In one way, it was. The trust stayed untouched, but in another way, it became educational. During discovery, we had to provide financial records for the past 5 years. That's when patterns became hard to ignore. Celestia's spending increased sharply after our wedding. Designer clothes, high-end spa treatments, luxury vacations charged to cards she seemed to expect me to pay off. Meanwhile, her real estate income was modest. Not bad, but not the kind of money that supports a lifestyle like that. It looked like she had been living as if my inheritance was a guarantee. Like she was spending now because she believed she would have permanent access later. The most telling evidence, though, wasn't a bank statement. It was her search history. As part of discovery, her attorney had to provide it. I remember reading the list and feeling my stomach sink, not from shock but from recognition. How to access husband's trust fund, spousal rights to inherited money, breaking irrevocable trusts, South Carolina inheritance law's spousal claims. She had started researching how to access my inheritance about 3 months after our wedding. Not after a fight, not after a hardship, not after some major life change. 3 months in, she was already looking for the door to a vault I never promised to open. At this point, what would you do? Would you still try counseling, or would you accept that the marriage was built on a misunderstanding? When we finally got in front of Judge Thalia Knox, the courtroom felt strangely quiet. Not tense in the dramatic way people imagine. More like a place where feelings don't get to run the meeting. Riven tried to present Celestia's argument for access to the trust. Judge Knox interrupted him within minutes. "Counselor," she said, "are you seriously arguing that your client has a claim to assets held in an irrevocable trust established years before her marriage?" Riven started to speak about the marriage being a partnership. The judge held up a hand. "I've been presiding over family court for 15 years, she said. "I've never seen a more clearly protected inheritance. The trust documents are pristine. The timeline is unambiguous. South Carolina law is crystal clear on this matter." Riven pivoted. He suggested that trust distributions during marriage could count as income for spousal support calculations, but he admitted even that would not grant access to the trust principle. The judge looked at the file, then back at him. "Is there any other matter to discuss?" Then something happened that I didn't expect. Riven turned to Celestia and said calmly, "Ma'am, I strongly recommend you accept whatever settlement your husband's attorney offers because this case is unwinnable." Celestia looked like she couldn't understand what she was hearing. This is the part people struggle with. When you build your identity around getting something, you don't just lose the thing when it's denied. You lose the story you told yourself about what you deserved. The settlement was straightforward. Celestia received half of our marital assets, around $40,000 in home equity and $15,000 in joint savings. No alimony, because she had earning capacity and the marriage was short-term. No claim to any trust assets. Her legal fees were massive. Mine were covered by a provision in the trust specifically meant for defending against inheritance claims. After it was finalized, Celestia's attorney shook Soren's hand and said, "That is the most thorough asset protection I've ever seen." "Who drafted the original trust?" Soren answered. "Judge Morrison Pike, my father." Then he added without emotion, he believed in protecting family wealth from family predators. The word predator hung in the air for a second. Nobody argued with it, not because it was cruel, but because the evidence had already done the talking. 6 months after the divorce, the fallout looked different for each of us. Celestia's reputation took a hit in Charleston's luxury real estate world. Wealthy clients do not like working with agents who have tried, publicly, to access an ex-spouse's inheritance through the court system. Her business dried up fast. She moved to Atlanta to start over and took a job with a corporate real estate firm, standard sales, not luxury. Meanwhile, the trust continued to do what my grandfather designed it to do. The principal stayed protected. The investments grew conservatively. The distributions covered what they were supposed to cover. I became more involved in the trust management. Not because I suddenly became obsessed with money, but because I finally understood the responsibility behind it. Inherited wealth isn't just an asset, it's a test. It attracts people. It pressures relationships. It makes motives easier to hide and easier to reveal. My dating life became interesting. In Charleston circles, word travels. People started calling me the guy who protected his inheritance. That attracted 2 types of women, the ones impressed by responsibility and the ones who saw me as a challenge. I learned to spot the difference quickly. The gold diggers ask about the structure within the first few dates. They ask numbers. They ask loopholes. They ask what they would be entitled to if things got serious. The genuine ones ask about my work, my family, my values, and the money comes up naturally, not like an interrogation. About 2 months ago, I started seeing someone new. Her name is Sarah. She's a pediatric nurse at Musk. She makes decent money herself, drives a sensible car, and when I mentioned the inheritance situation, her response was simple. "That's smart," she said. "Family money should stay protected." She didn't ask for details. She didn't suggest expensive places I should pay for. She didn't hint about what we could do with my money. It was refreshing to be valued for something other than my grandfather's financial planning. Looking back, I'm grateful the situation happened when it did. Better to learn someone's priorities 2 years in than 10 years in, when the stakes are higher and the damage is deeper. The final irony is this. If Celestia had stayed married and acted like a partner, she would have lived comfortably off the lifestyle that the trust distribution supported for decades. Not because she deserved the inheritance, but because the marriage would have continued and life would have continued. But by trying to grab everything at once, she ended up with nothing beyond her fair share of marital assets, and she taught me exactly who she was. These days, I manage my part of the trust with the same philosophy my grandfather had. The money isn't mine like a prize. It belongs to the family, past and future. My job is to be a good steward of something larger than myself. Sometimes the best investment advice really is legal advice, and sometimes the most expensive lesson you can teach someone is that prepared people can't be financially manipulated. Celestia learned that being married to wealth doesn't make you wealthy. She just learned it the hard way. Lesson 1. When someone gives you an ultimatum about inherited money, listen closely. They are telling you what they value. Lesson 2. A healthy marriage shares decisions, but it doesn't erase boundaries that were set long before the relationship existed. Lesson 3. If someone starts researching how to access your assets early in the marriage, the relationship may be more transactional than you think. Lesson 4. Protecting family wealth is not the same as distrusting a spouse. It's acknowledging that motives can change. Lesson 5. If a relationship depends on you breaking your own safeguards, it's not partnership. It's pressure. So what about you? If your spouse demanded access to an inheritance and threatened divorce, would you negotiate, or would you call their bluff? And where do you draw the line between transparency in marriage and protecting what was never meant to be shared?